Okay, great. It sounds like we are live. Everyone can hear me okay, who can see me on my Zoom section. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. And to give myself a caveat, I came on as a replacement for Elena Barakat, who had something come up and was going to be the moderator and is much more wonderful than me, but I will try to do her justice. I am a New Hampshire-based filmmaker, New Hampshire and Boston. I do all sorts of different things, from documentaries to low budget features, ultra low features, TV, animation, a little bit of everything. And I moved to New Hampshire in 2005 and didn't think I would be able to continue to do those things. And I found this amazing community. And the more I work in this community, the more I find out I don't know everybody. And so this is wonderful to get to connect with everybody. So let's dive right in. So let's just start with introductions. If you don't mind, I'm going to go in the order in which you are on my screen, which may not be the order you're on your screen. But let's start with Anna. Can you do an introduction of yourself and tell us what's awesome about you?
Where do I start?
Yeah.
My name's Anna. I'm from Amesbury, Massachusetts. My time in the production industry, I'd say, is, started recently. Let me see, where should I start? I think a lot of filmmakers kind of have a similar story when they were kids. Ever since they were kids, they wanted to tell stories and make movies, and that is the same with me. I have all these videos of me wrangling my brothers and cousins and telling stories and making movies, and that eventually translated into telling stories through makeup effects and monsters and creatures. I worked managing the makeup effects at Canterbury Lake Park for a few years, and then I met Mr. Nick Thrula on an indie feature in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and now I work with him at his production company full-time as a production assistant, camera assistant, editor.
Awesome. That conveniently throws over to Nick. Nick, tell us about how awesome you are.
Well, yeah, I don't know about awesome, but so my story is much different. Maybe I didn't want to make films, didn't go to school to make films. I'm like an uneducated guy, you could say. I was a mechanic first and somehow fell into this through a bunch of steps that happened. And now I own and operate a production company for about 10 years. Before that, I was a professional photographer for 3 years for print photography, mostly in the automotive industry. And let's see, so every day I make commercial advertising videos and documentaries and short stories about people for like healthcare companies, nonprofits, anyone that has something to sell or raise money for. And I work often as crew in New Hampshire or sometimes out of state on feature films and or short films. And I've done a bunch of, let's say, short people story docs. I hate calling them docs just because they're like kind of driven by the character. But we've just recently wrapped our first short that we've self-funded. So I think that's probably why we're here. So maybe a little different than some people. I don't have a fun story from my childhood.
I'm not muted. There I am. I said it takes all kinds of stories, Nick.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, all different roads. What about you, George? Tell us your cool story.
Hi, everyone. My name is George, and like Anna, I grew up, my brother and I commandeering our family's VHS camcorder and running around making movies. I grew up on an island called American Samoa, which is way down in the South Pacific. And my family is originally from Michigan, so that's where most of my family is based now. But I live in San Diego, California, and I teach at a university called John Paul the Great Catholic University. And it is a entrepreneurial business and creative arts university. And our film program is our biggest program, but it's still, I think maybe 98 kids in that program, kids, young, awesome filmmakers. So I love working here because every semester, every quarter, I'm learning through teaching and get to, work in post-production and work in cinematography and all of these different things and engage with these young, passionate filmmakers who want to find a way to make a living through their art. So that's a great job for me, and that's how I make my living. And then all of my film endeavors are self-funded for now. So I know Sam and Dennis, who are on this panel with us, because we collaborated on an anthology called 8 Beats, which was 8 different short films all made by different teams all around the United States. That project was hugely impactful in my own career because I had made a lot of no budget short films and things like that. But that was the first film that I actually had, a substantial budget for, which hopefully we'll get into what that meant for me, what substantial was. And then from there, I guess we completed that last year. And then this year, my wife and I collaborated on a short film that was, that I'd love to talk more about. I'm very proud of it. The short story is, when I showed the script to my friends, they said, wow, this is awesome. It's going to cost a lot of money. And like my whole life has been training to figure out how could I make this thing for this amount of money. So I was like, you'll see, we'll show you. And maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But so that's the quick intro for me. And I'm in the process of developing my first feature film. So that's where we're at.
You're in the thick. You're in the thick. Sam, tell us about how cool you are.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say how cool I am, but I'll tell you my story. Like others, I've always been a filmmaker. Started out mostly drawing as before I can remember. So just always had a visual mind. And when we started skate videos in our neighborhood, and then that evolved into storytelling with friends and family members, and I caught the bug early. I spent many hours, drawing storyboards and writing scripts, and that turned into in high school probably some of the most creative times of my life, because instead of doing school, we had this communications program, and we were so good at what we did. I mean, at our age, that we just stopped going to school basically and did that full time, and that's the American public education for you. But it was the great education, and it made me really focus in on what cinema is and what being a filmmaker could be, even at that small level, very DIY, and that's, I think, where I found the love for it. I took a detour in college. I got accepted in the Art Institute of Chicago, but I also wanted to become a priest. So I went to seminary for 3 years and then decided that's not for me. I finished with a philosophy degree, which I think also helps in my filmmaking. And I still am interested in philosophy. But filmmaking was always there. I worked in television in Canada for a little bit, and then came back to Chicago, where I live now with my wife. And I started a production company in 2015, and we mainly do docs, mini docs, and I'm a producer and a cinematographer, along with just being a one-man band, full production house myself. And so we're scaling up from kind of just working out of my house to owning a studio and stuff like that. As George mentioned, the last 4 years of my life were basically had this idea to bring together a community of filmmakers to do short films based on the 8 Beatitudes. And so we were really inspired by Krzysztof Kieślowski, who is a Polish film director who did the Decalogue. So if some cinephiles might know the Decalogue, and that was kind of the starting off point of how we can tell stories from one theme. And so that started a 4-year project for us, and I ended up executive producing, meaning I brought in the talent, and I brought in the other directors, and we worked on scripts together, but mainly just gave creative control to everybody, and they went out and did their films. And then I did my first short film, which is a 20-minute period piece in French, and kind of very art house, hopefully not pretentious, but a passion project. Oh yeah, also it cost me a lot of money. So if we want to talk about that budgeting side and stuff, I have some horror stories. that's it. Go ahead.
Okay, that's great. I think horror stories are helpful, and I think that's one of my favorite pastime is to sit around and complain about how much we have to do and how much we love it. Great. So Dennis, tell us your exciting story.
Yes, hello everybody out there. I'll try to make it brief and just work some of these experiences into our discussion. I had no real aspirations to be a filmmaker. I studied philosophy and theology in college, and psychology was ultimately my focus. But I loved experimental video, the works of like Bill Viola, Michael Snow. I didn't really want to get into narrative. I just never found narrative, Hollywood narrative films like riveting enough in some way. And I found experimental video super engaging and kind of weird and wild and open to anything. So I really found the artistry of the medium there. And I could never reconcile those two worlds between kind of the conventional industry narrative formats and experimental video until I started to learn about a lot of the European filmmakers and just not really just European, really global cinema in general. Iranian cinema and there's so many Latin American films too that kind of opened the changed the paradigm for me and said, no, this goes well beyond Hollywood. And then I started to kind of embrace the fact that an hour and a half long film could have a depth that goes beyond the numbers, paint by numbers thing. And so I'm kind of here. I've done a bunch of shorts, did a bunch of very low budget feature films in pre-production on two of them, feature film 6 and 7, and I was teaching at the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan for the last 3 years until recently. I stopped teaching and took a different job at a media company, but. Yeah, that's it. There's a lot to say. I mean, let's just chat.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. So let's see, let's just dive into some stories. One of our next questions, and sounds like Sam is ready to answer this one, is talk about making your first film, how you got it done, where it went, how did the financing go? What did you learn? What did you mess up? What did you do awesome at?
Yeah, I hope the audience can relate to this. So basically, because I had such a DIY background, I had no industry experience. And so before writing and directing this piece, I didn't even know what an AD did or what a grip truck was or some very, very basic things that are your tools. But at the same time, it didn't really matter. I had one thing that I kind of knew going into it is that I wanted to hire up, meaning that I knew enough people to say that they're going to know more of kind of the technical stuff. And so really relying on that. So I got a bunch of union people in Chicago, and that's really what ended up costing so much. So I don't know if you want me to bring up the numbers or whatever, but I just wanted to note that my experience was I felt I knew a lot about film, just watching film and loving film and doing all the DIY stuff. But when it came to, I didn't know what I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be an experience for a lot of first-time filmmakers, is that embrace that you are limited to the degree of your experience, and that's both an asset for you and a learning experience. So that's what I would say.
I agree. And I think that touches on, the formation of the team, as you're talking about, and people, I went to film school, but that's very theoretical, so you need that mix of people who have that theoretical background and who are just film lovers like yourself, but you also need the people who know the math and the science of it and the real technical stuff. And I think that on the first film, you learn quickly that you're forming a team, and it's so much about that. Who else would like to come off with a story about your first film, how you got it done? George, tell us a story.
Yeah, I'd love to, I'll talk about my first film, but I'd also love to just pick up some of what Sam was talking about. I think, exactly what Sam was saying is like, you don't know what you don't know. And so bringing on people who know better than you how to do their job is so important. If we're talking about from the perspective of a director, I'm someone who loves everything. I love editing. I love visual effects. I love, every part of the process, but I'm not great at any of them, which is why I direct, right? And so having people that can like get the job done is really important. But I would also say with your first film and really any film, I personally value into person's personality and their like dedication to the project, their just see their attitude. I would rather have somebody who's not as great at something but who is great to be around, who's not going to create like a toxic set environment, because that just destroys the project and you have no fun and you've spent all your time prepping for like what should be a really great fun experience. But so for my first film experience, Sam and Dennis and I were on the 8 Beats project, so I'll use that as my example. I had lots of no budget films before then, and actually I guess that's what I want to say is when we talk about our first film, the film that I made had a budget of $10,000, and then my producer and I put in a little bit more money, and it ended up around like 13 or 14,000. So that's a lot of money to me for a short film. That, of course, was not the first time we'd ever turned on a camera. So the biggest thing that I would stress to anyone wanting to make their first film is make sure you can make a 1-minute film. Like, it's so hard to make 1 minute of actually watchable, riveting cinema. So when you think about, lighting, sound design, post-production, performance, where do you put the camera, your blocking, there's like a million puzzle pieces that go into that 1 minute of film. So before you go shovel out or try to raise $100,000 or $1 million to make a movie, make sure that you can make 1 minute of decent, like solid movie
Right.
for nothing, for like as little as possible.
It's always so hard. I always find it a little heartbreaking, and maybe this is me being an old codger, but when I meet someone and they're doing their first film and you can tell this is their opus, it's like, no, then don't make it first. No, practice on, something else. Don't make your opus be your first film, because you'll either never finish it, you'll work on it for the rest of your life, or it'll be a disastrous experience for you, or maybe it'll be great. I don't want to curse the universe, but I totally hear what you're saying. It's an art, but it's also a practice.
Yeah.
Can I just add something to that? Like,
Jump in, Dennis.
it's so true that so many, I think like, many people must have, people use the term, what is it, that perfection tends to paralyze people from getting anything done. And it's not about perfection when you're getting started. I mean, that's the biggest and hardest thing to kind of, wrap your head around, that it's a habit of being. And if you're in the habit of making things, of creating things, it's not really about like doing something and then being like, I'm done, like I'm the top of the world, I'm the best. It's really about like getting into the habit of creating work, finding your flow, finding your groove, who you like, what you're good at. Not all directors are good at everything. Everybody has different strengths. Some directors come from directing theater, so they're not I guess they're good at other things, and they might have come from a different direction and been better at something else. But the point is that there is a lot of insecurity when you're starting out, and I think a lot of filmmakers should just right away get rid of that feeling that like they don't know this or they don't know that, because you're not going to know things for many, many years if you're open about the fact that you don't know things. And that's exciting. And I've met some of the greatest cinematographers alive who can tell you that they're learning and problem solving every single project is a new puzzle to unpack. And so as soon as like you just kind of find confidence that unless you're doing something by rote, which is lighting the same way, which is, you have to do that in maybe interview settings sometimes or whatever, where it's just kind of a repetition sort of thing, and you figure out the tricks and then you're kind of done. But if you're making a movie, you're really never done. So that's just like a thing to just kind of internalize right away, is you're just not gonna know, and it's okay. And be open about it, ask the right questions, and rely on the people who do know, and just move along. And you're muted, I think, Karlina.
I'm going to keep screwing that up. Sorry. What I was saying was, thank you. That's very good thought, Dennis. And Anna, did you want to chime in? I saw.
Yeah, I'd like to touch on that perfectionism topic we were just talking about. I think that there's definitely a lot of worry making your first film, especially when it's different. Like making a painting, you can just not show it to someone. Making a film, you're making it for a lot of people to see. And we were actually just talking to a friend of ours. We met someone for coffee, and we were all talking about that exact thing. And they were saying, I'm so nervous. What if, I always think about, what if it's not funny? What if, what I think is funny isn't what they think is funny? So we actually just came off of talking about this. And I think it's important to remember that while filmmaking is definitely really technical, it's also art. And that's how I look at it. I said in my bio that I actually went to college for art therapy. Mm-hmm. And that involved, the whole thing with art therapy is just letting go of any hangups you have and just getting in touch with the inner child is a term that we, art therapists use a lot, inner child, because kids aren't afraid of looking stupid. They haven't developed that yet. They don't care about being told that their idea is stupid or their drawing is, not good. They just create and they don't worry about it. And I think that we as adults lose touch with that. So I think that remembering that filmmaking is an art and letting yourself be free and creative with it and being vulnerable will yield a lot of surprising results, and let yourself be more creative when you're not so worried about it being like a math equation, and you just kind of let your hair down, for lack of a better term, and you think might surprise yourself with what you have inside you if you're not afraid of what other people will think. But touching back on kind of earlier discussion that we were talking about, also have to be realistic when making your first film. So I think it's a blend of those two things. It's easy, me especially, because of everything I just talked about, it's easy to say, oh, we've got this awesome script and we've got great actors and let's go do it. Let's just have fun. But you have to be realistic. And there's a lot that comes with making a successful film, I guess. So I'll let people, jump off of that, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's an important, comedians talk about that first time they flop. And I think that the first time as a filmmaker, you go, I just made a big old heap of garbage. That is such junk. I don't even know what to do. That it's cleansing because you've seen it and you're like, yep, that was crap. And then you move on and you move on. Nick, do you want to add anything else to the discussion of first time films, how you got it done, how it went, financing, anything like that? Would you do it again?
Yeah, I think like I'm going to start with what Anna ended on, and then I'm going to go back to maybe the beginning, how I look at it. But what she's saying, I think, is most important is, the first personal project. Like I said, I started in print photography, and I did like a secret book project about a guy while I had a job as a photographer. And when I launched it, I didn't tell anybody about it because I was not only self-conscious, it was the first time I was showing people. I didn't even talk about what I did for a living. And I was publishing, 1,500 photos in 6 months all the time. But I was so embarrassed of myself. So I did this project, and when I finally brought it out, people were so excited about it. And it sold out in 1 week, this book. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, people care. But I guess where I'm going to this, I was so nervous to even tell anybody because it was me. It was exposing myself. It's how I saw this thing. This is what I thought looked good. For the first time, I was telling people an opinion. I'm opinionated if you're in private with me, but not publicly. I'm not going to do that. So I think what Anna was saying about exposing yourself and being vulnerable is the most important thing about making art, but not, you know, I wouldn't dare say like not all filmmaking is art, but not all filmmaking is art, you know, in some way. And I'll kind of end with that, but even going back, like, so making your first film, you know, this is what I do for a living, and whether it's garbage commercials that I don't want anyone to see, or making a story about someone that changed their life through a health choice, stuff that makes me cry when I'm shooting the interviews, you know, the most important thing is prep. And what I mean by that is, like, sure, you might not have an education, you might not have any money, and you probably only know a few people that do this, but the internet exists, and the internet is so strong these days for helping you get started. And if you were to look at how, you know, look at how other people make their films on the large scale and apply that to yourself the best way you can. And I don't mean money-wise, I mean organization-wise, because when you write a script, it could be fantastic. But the thing you don't want to do is get on location and don't know how the scene was going to break down, how many camera positions you need. Now I'm going to start speaking like the technician, because that's what I am. I'm a camera operator and a DP. But you have to know how many camera positions, how many times it's going to move, how many shots for that day. And that all happens in script breakdowns and scene breakdowns, all very important. You should go in guessing at focal lengths. And I'm being serious now. Like, you should, and I know some of it's art, but when you really want to make it enjoyable for everybody, we're talking about that, organization is how. You know, kill that whole 12-hour day thing that they do in Hollywood. It's not realistic in independent films. If you're reaching out, you know, my team is tight. My camera team, like, I don't have to talk to them. We communicate with looks. We do a great job. But when it comes to the days on set, I keep them short and I keep them fun, unless they have to be long as a location. But if you're going to do 8 hours with everybody, treat them well. Food, of course, you're going to do that, but try to pay people when you can. But short times and fun, because if you are going to do 4 days in a row and you're going 12 hours and 13 hours and 14 hours, and I've been there, I've driven home from jobs where I focus pulled for 14 hours, slept on the side of the road in a rainstorm to wake up to almost have to go right back to pull focus again all night. Difficult. So I think that pre-planning, breaking down your script and saying, I could shoot this thing in 3 days or 4 days. And then you break it down, you go, man, we can't do this. Because when you start timing your shots and, like, I need 2 hours for this shot, maybe you need 2 more days, and that comes into the money. But maybe that's, to me, that's how you have to look at it. How many days do you have? Yeah, extend it, and then start looking at how much money it's going to cost. Sometimes the money trumps the pain, so you can replace it, you know. I'm sorry, go ahead, George.
Oh no, I really appreciate what you're saying, Nick, and what Anna said. So I just wanted to kind of contribute, you know, kind of off of what you two have kind of set up. The idea of being realistic and prepping, right? Like, if you're the more ambitious the project, the more prepared that you have to be. And having a producer is the one thing. You need a good producer. Your producer should be a creative ally and like the actor's best friend, a good producer, right? Who wants to say yes to them to help them achieve their creative vision, but is willing to say no when it's not going to work. So an example from my film that I mentioned, that it was really ambitious. The script called for a scene in feudal Japan and a scene with a bunch of, like, pirates in the Mediterranean Sea and a scene in the Old West, and all of these locations. And I'm in San Diego, California. So we have beaches, and, you know, the gold rush was in California. So, like, we have locations that are suitable for that. And I was like, oh, there's this waterfall 2 hours north. And my wife, who is our producer, said, we are shooting this entire movie within a 20-mile radius of our house. We're gonna shoot at our house. That's gonna be the location, and everything has to be within a 20-minute drive. And she was so right on with that. And she found us amazing locations that looked great. But getting into some of that technical nitty-gritty stuff, we had a shot list that was just, I mean, I could recite it in my sleep. It had focal lengths, it had A camera and B camera, what they were going to be on. And on set, when we ran out of time, it was very easy to say, okay, we don't need this, we don't need this, we're going to jump to this, and if we have time, we'll come back to this. But that's the level of preparedness you need to have when you bring it, when the whole machine is running, right? When you have a bigger crew and things like that. So, so thank you, Nick, for that. That was all, especially the 8-hour day thing. you can go pre-light, you can go scout a location and be like, this is going to be our plan, but you don't need everybody to be there
Right.
for 12 hours.
Yeah, even like I just was talking, we just wrapped the job on Friday and I was telling my AC as we were walking out, I said, what is with everybody trying to book us for 12 hours? Like when you go on as crew, we're like making commercials. Businesses don't work that long. Like this isn't Hollywood. We don't need to do 12-hour days. And I think the max, if you ask me that I would ever ask my crew to do on emergency would be 10 hours. And I wouldn't do it because it's not fun. And people be like, oh, well, Nick, how do you get it done in 12? Well, maybe we need an extra day.
Yeah.
But I think that's what it comes down to sometimes.
Have you guys noticed, I want to throw this into the conversation. I think we used to complain about this more about 5 years ago, once filmmaking became very accessible to anybody, which is wonderful, you know, that anyone can pick up their cell phone, wherever mine is, and make a film. However, I think it glamorized guerrilla filmmaking and this sort of jumping in and working for 25 hours and I'm so tired, but I haven't slept for 80,000 years. And this sort of pride of doing things in a way that is not professional, not productive. It limits creativity. And I feel like that kind of puts a big punch to everybody who really wants to do this well. And I'm not saying you have to have a film background, but if you just feel like, oh, I like movies, so I'm going to get together with Uncle Joe and my 3 dogs and make a movie. And, you know, you end up pissing off everybody in town, pardon my language, because you didn't tell anyone you were going to be in town. But do you guys still feel any overhang from that, or is it kind of gone?
I think like going back to being organized, I will say that if you're shooting Verite, like whatever, like you're shooting a doc or a story about somebody, you could do it. You can even go out and shoot a film without really breaking it down. Depends on how creative you are. Some people are very talented, some actors are really good. But I think when you're talking about making a film, you know, maybe your first one isn't as organized, but then you learn the mistakes. You're like, oh, next time I can't do this without an AD, or I can't do this without an AC or a second AC, or, you know, I need a gaffer, or maybe, oh, I didn't need all those lights we brought, you know. So, but I guess what I'm saying is that I don't want to discourage people from, because now they're like, oh man, I don't know how to break down a scene. I think you should still shoot stuff and do it. But when you break down the scene, you end up shooting for the edit, and that saves you money in storage. It saves you money with your editor. If you use an editor, colorist, sound design, score, everything, you just save money. But with Verity, what do you do?
Some of these things can be done on a, and we touched on this, a short film. People might make a short film and think you can just do that for a longer period of time. And I don't think that that's the case. What do you guys think? Those who have made shorts and then gone to features, were there any, holy cow, this is so much different and I didn't expect this moments or anything like that? Anyone?
I can say, like, for me shooting, I think in creating a lot of short stuff myself and working on features, I think essentially you're working scene by scene, but or just arc is shorter and there's less fill. But I think if you're shooting for the scene, you're shooting for the scene. So it's kind of irregardless of the length of the film, if you ask me. I don't know that I just think it's more money. You know, if we wrapped our film Summer that we just finished and we're really excited about it. We wish it could have been in Monadnock, but it was, you know, maybe next year. But we left it and I'm like, oh, I want to make a feature. But the first thing I do is like, I write the outline and I go, okay, I need $3 million. So I'm going to get back to work and just never do it.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, the formats change. The thing is that I don't feel like I've had enough consistency in anything that I've ever done to, like, the crew sizes have never been the same. I've worked on a DP on multi-million-dollar projects, but then I've also written and directed, you know, projects that were in thousands of dollars, so not anywhere near that. So it changes all the time, and every time, you know, there are new challenges. But really, you know, when you, like, for example, my very first film is called Nocturnal Jake, and it's about a saxophone player who communicates with his deceased mother. And it's a very strange kind of haunting kind of art film. And we shot that, you know, we were shooting, I think, every other weekend, every couple of weekends for like 2 years. And that's the only way we could manage to do it. We had no budget. We knew how to set up a camera, and we didn't have any real professional gaffers stepping in. But to this day, I still think it's one of the most proud. I know what went into making that movie and to pulling it off, and it's like, you know, the staying power. I think most of you guys here that have made movies know how hard it is to complete a film and see it all the way through to the end. And that, that's like an ultra marathon to me sometimes. Even when the edit isn't coming together and you have to like force every last scrap of will inside you to just get the next cut worked out somehow so that things really kind of work, or you have to do reshoots or pickups where the story isn't working. You have to get everything back together and everybody back out there and try to fill in those gaps of a story. I think shooting over a period of 2 years was like incredible. And there are filmmakers now like Pavel Pawlikowski, who did Cold War, Last Resort, a bunch of other films, or Ida that won the Academy Award, who build in a month in the middle of their shooting so that they can look at their entire what they're shooting. So this, like, I love it when artistry actually enters this medium, because Nick mentioned it. Not all movies are art, and to fool yourself into thinking that you're making art, it's like, that's a very tricky conversation that maybe would be better saved for another forum. But the idea being that when you're shooting, you're gonna sometimes you might have all the setups worked out, you might have had a great shot list and you're kind of knocking things out one by one. But if you're not really looking at what's there, you're not really seeing what the camera is capturing, you're gonna get into the editing room and you're gonna be like, wow, maybe I don't know what's happening here. Maybe the story was telling me something else. And I think artistry can really come in when you do have a little bit of room, when you're not rushing things, when you're looking at the rushes or just, whatever, your footage at the end of the day, and you're figuring out whether things are moving in the direction that you want them to do. And that's a luxury that either you do when you're like, Malik, or you have actually so much luxury as a beginning filmmaker to do that. A lot, if you're gonna stay within a tight budget and you're gonna have everything planned to the T over a course of days, over a limited and finite set of days, I don't think that's gonna be in the service ultimately of something a little bit more artful. I think you're gonna check off all your, boxes. You're gonna dot your T's or dot your I's, and I'd rather dot the T's and cross out the I's. But then who knows whether you're gonna have a film that you're really proud of. So I just want to say that, like, I took my very first feature as I called it my exorcism, because I had so many things in my mind that had been brewing for so many years that I just wanted to try. And so I just kept trying, and ultimately, I think what came out of it was just like a very, very alive kind of a piece of cinema, and I'm happy with that. I'm not happy with some of the other ones that came after that, but with that one specifically, we played. And so play.
That's awesome. Sam, I was looking at your bio earlier, and you've done both narrative features and documentary features, correct? Yeah. Do you want to talk? Yeah. Do you want to talk about, picking up on anything Dennis said or anyone else about the difference between those two? I've done both, and I found it very interesting the first time I did my first doc after having done features. I was like, oh, well, this is just a few people and a camera. Little did I know.
Yeah. First, I will answer that, but just briefly, I think what is interesting to me in the conversation that Anna brought up and other people had mentioned is kind of like this existential question. Anna kind of said it is like finding your inner child, and Dennis said a habit of being. But it's a big question for artists. It's a big question for every human being. It's you're going about the world, and you have found yourself in relationships and a type of culture that cinema is within a live option for the way you will be in the world. Mm-hmm. And that question of the question of what am I doing, what am I actually doing, will actually answer more questions down the line about what your limits are. So it's a type of like self-reflection that you have to do. So for instance, there isn't one way to make a film. And so we can't really speak to who the audience is and who is listening right now. They have to know, well, what are your limitations? Like, what are your reasons for being a filmmaker? And that will kind of dictate, well, how long do I want to spend on a project? How much money do I want to spend on a project? How long, what am I willing to do for it? And that also comes with a shadow side, because what we think we know about ourselves can also be very dangerous, in that we can become hyper focused, and that obsession can come into play, and so that it's a big psychological game. And the best kind of rule for filmmaking is just be a good person, be a virtuous person, be a generous person and a humble person. And that's going to be a better rule for you to follow as a filmmaker, if you can do that interior work and understand why you're doing it in the beginning. So yeah, before I say anything else about that, I kind of wanted to hear everyone else's, of like that existential question, like how has that shaped you as a filmmaker? And Anna hasn't talked for a while, so I kind of posed that question to her.
Yeah, go ahead, Anna. Let's hear it.
I'm interested to hear other people speak first, because this is really interesting.
All right, who wants to speak? Come on, there we go. Go, George.
Oh, so, I mean, first of all, I just want to say before the call ends, Anna, we'll probably all benefit from like a group therapy session with you if you keep all the practice running.
I'm hoping.
It's going to involve mostly finger painting, so.
Yeah. Please, more finger painting, less politics. But can I just chime in one thing? For those who are watching the stream, if you have any questions, put them into whatever that chat box is that you are seeing. I am seeing a different stream, but those questions will get to me, and I will move on to questions as soon as I start getting any. Until then, we are going to keep having this great conversation. George.
So I think the thing that just stuck out to me when Sam was talking was about that, like as artists, especially when the stakes are high, like Anna was saying, we have like this pressure on ourselves, and that all contributes to what Dennis is saying, where you're trying to do things the right way and you're not giving yourself the space to just be present. But for what Sam was saying about like that danger of becoming too hyper focused and too obsessed, that's the importance of a producer, or one of the many important roles of a producer, is that if you're the director just like drilling in without somebody to help remind you, like tap you on the shoulder and help you come up for air, it's easy to drill in like that. But what Dennis was saying really resonates with me, because just finished up, we were so prepped for it, and there were, you know, the majority of the project was just a phenomenal experience, and I'm very happy with the film. But the first morning of production, I was up at 5 a.m, couldn't sleep, just like ready to rock and roll, and I had to swing by my office to get something, and a friend of mine was like working on construction on the building, and he was like, hey, don't forget to have fun. And it was the best advice that I had been given. And so now this speaks to a question that we were discussing before the panel started, was you have a short film, but then what does it look like to then apply that on a feature film scale? If we took my last short film, which the budget was $15,000, if we tried to apply that on a feature film budget, it would not just be, we shot 4 days, now we're going to shoot 20 days. So you take the amount of days and you times it, that's not how it would work. It would be an exponential curve, which Karlina talked about before the panel began. Because we're having all these people work for very little money. So when you're approaching a larger form project, my perspective is shifting. And this is what Dennis was saying that's resonating with me so much, is now I'm looking at a feature film and thinking, how do I just play? Like, how do I try to make the best possible movie and still prep, but recognize we can't bring out a crew of 10 people and pay them a day rate. I need to pick 2 people, like a cinematographer / gaffer / camera op, and then like a first AD / boom op and sound recordist, and then go like make a film with all the resources that I have in Michigan with my family and my mom catering and, doing it very much the like Peter Jackson, Christopher Nolan route. And I'm so excited. The amount of limitations placed on that project now, thinking we're not going to light it. Like, we're going to go available light and augment it. It's had conceiving up and prepping for a film and looking at the script and thinking, all right, this is how I would write it, but I don't have access to these things. I have access to these things. How can the story change? And the story has benefited so greatly from those limitations. So for everyone, pick a start date, pick a budget that's not going to ruin your life, find a producer who's going to make sure you don't go over that budget, and then have fun and do the best job you can. I think it's kind of everything that everyone's saying. That's kind of what I would
I think that's great. And I will just, I'm a producer. I don't direct, I don't write. So I'm very, whatever I am. And I love doing it. But I think that what you're saying at the base is, the more prepared you are, the more fun you can have. That's what I always tell people when they're like, yeah, if I do all these charts and all these forms, I don't have to spend 35 seconds finding this and that, because it's right there. And then that's 5 seconds. I could find the thing. 30 minutes, I can chill and make a joke with my team. But Anna, we haven't forgotten about you. Let's hear it.
So Sam, rephrase your question, because I liked what you were saying, but I want to make sure I'm answering it properly.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the audience in mind, as far as like they're seeking advice, they're kind of searching for something. So I feel like what has been your experience that you learned about yourself from that, who you are as a person, and maybe just speaking to the audience about, like, maybe I don't think anyone is ready for that type of transformation that will happen, nor do they know what type of transformation that they'll have, but they will have one. And so you can direct either in a negative way or a positive way how you change as a person making films.
So that's a good question. I think so. I just, with Nick, co-directing, just wrapped up, my directorial debut for such a, big term. And I think, as far as what changed in me during the process, trying not to just talk about, the actual technical things that I learned, like what, I think that it brings out a lot of confidence. You kind of learn, I think, going into it, let me try to think of the best way to phrase this. It's hard going into your first, directorial experience and realizing that you are the voice and you can direct people and you can not tell people what to do, but you have to have confidence in yourself and your abilities and your vision and just what you envision in your head, and just kind of letting go of that vulnerability that we talked about earlier, and just reminding yourself, no, this is, I'm here to do this. This is my crew. These are my actors. So for me personally, I think I've found a lot of confidence, and I think maybe a lot of that came after the fact. Looking back, for me, I learned mostly in retrospect, which is terrible, but I think hopefully everybody that is going on to their first filmmaking experience can go into it with a lot of confidence, come out and look back on it, think about what went wrong, what went right, and go into their next project with even more confidence. And so I think.
So what built the confidence? Like, what was the challenge that you overcame? You're like, oh, I could do it. What gave you confidence?
Speaking to actors, specifically, if we're talking about one specific thing. I actually talked to Nick about this when we had our meeting with our friend. It's hard to feel like you're telling someone how to do their job, I guess. That's how I felt. Actors are they're so great, our actors, but in general, and co-directors and lighting and grip and prop managers, it's hard to feel like you have the authority to put your hands in there, I guess. Yeah. So that's I'd say is just confidence in your ability to, I'm kind of losing my words, but confidence, I guess, is the big thing.
I think that was great. And I think what you touched on there too about the feeling comfortable in the authority
Yeah.
of telling people how to do their jobs. But I would actually suggest maybe it's not telling people how to do their jobs. It's telling people, I am the director. Here is what I need from you.
Right,
And
exactly.
you're
It's not telling
correct.
people how to do their jobs. That's
Right.
the point. Yeah.
I don't want to correct you, but I think
No, I know, but that's what it can feel like, I think.
either.
And that's,
Yeah.
it can feel like that, I think.
Yeah. That's super interesting.
Sam, I do. Can I just say one quick thing? Like I just wanted to echo Sam's notion about why we do it, why we do what we do. A great mentor and friend for many years has been the filmmaker Rob Nielsen of mine. I've known him for many years, and he said the same thing. I had him talk to students at the School of Visual Arts at the end, right as COVID was happening earlier in the year. Before the semester before the semester ended, we went on to Zoom, transitioned to Zoom, and so I was able to get a lot of guests in that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise have. And he said to the students, he's like, look, ask yourself why are you doing this? Because you could end up just torturing yourself for the rest of your life if you don't have an answer for that. So that's probably a good place to start. That's a very important place to start, just to avoid heartache and confusion down the line. You got to know why you're doing this.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. That's important. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to what Anna was saying about confidence. So something that, I might want to talk about myself, but like when you're as a still photographer or DP or director or whatever, like you have to be confident in directing people and taking charge. So where my advice to beginning filmmakers is number one, if you have a vision and it's worked out, and you do because you're here, right? You're going to make this film. Communicate with people. Don't be afraid to say, move the camera to your cinematographer, your DP, whatever you want to call them. Mm-hmm. Don't be afraid to say, I don't like the lighting, or don't be afraid to say, I wanted to try this a different way. Be kind, find a way to say it. When I'm working with somebody, I don't say that didn't work. I'd say that was great. Let's try this too. But it's okay to keep trying to get what you want. And my number one biggest piece of advice would be, if anyone else is ever directing over your shoulder or speaking up during something, quell that immediately. Mm-hmm. Take them to the side, tell them to stop it. Give it to you in your ear, be open to the advice, but last thing you want is your talent or your team, your gaffer, whoever, to hear someone else saying something, because then they don't know who to look to. Right. And you want to be in charge of that set. And that's something I said to Anna right away, like, just have the confidence, say what you want. And yeah, we co-directed, but I whisper in her ear. I don't say like, no, I'm a DP that operates. So I know what works for my camera, and I might move the blocking a little, but I'm not going to speak up and be like, that didn't work for me. You might hear me say that once in a while, but most times I'm going to whisper.
I just want to stress how, and please continue. I so value what you're saying right now, because I think a lot of us, as we are working in our lower budget things, with our friends and family, we want to make it a good experience while our team. But I've seen so many disasters where, yes, we're a team and we're working together, but we still need to stay in our lanes and do our own jobs. And I've been on the few where, well, the director is directing, but really the writer is directing the talent, and the camera. It turns into a nightmare. So
if the writer's there, like, they could be there, but they have to just be quiet, I think. And I'll tell you, like, also, I leave, what do I learn doing these things? Like, I do this a lot, I direct a lot of people, but what I learn is, like, I often think I'm a jerk when I go home, and I often have to, but everybody wants to keep working with me. So I don't know if that's true, but I often go home and have to send long texts. I actually text everyone every night how much I appreciate, and not just randomly, like, something you did that day was phenomenal, I'm going to tell you. And that's because I go home feeling like a jerk, because I had to say, like, something to my sound guy, something to this guy. Hey, that's not working. And that's me as a guy that's just seeing out, through my viewfinder, right?
Well, I think it also goes to what we were talking about earlier, sort of assembling a team. And while you might want Aunt Kathy to be the caterer, Aunt Kathy does a good job with Thanksgiving, but she's not a caterer for a film, and she doesn't get that being 10 minutes late is a huge issue. So I think that as much as I love the whole community, you need to work with people who get the dynamic, you might not be inappropriately angry with someone, but you need to be able to speak there's
Yeah, I
a
don't think I
dynamic
get
on the
angry, but I
set that
just like,
people-
yeah,
confidence has to be on the set, or it's just going to turn into drama and silliness.
yeah. Yeah, and for sure, I think like also your first film, work on other people's, give time to other people that you want their time, because if you can't pay people and you want people to volunteer, they will not show up day 2 if you treat them poorly, if you don't respect them, and if you don't help them and return the favor. So I think it's, it is a community, right? Like I can't make my films without people saying, I'll work for you for nothing because it was fun last time, or if we could pay them,
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is they won't show up again if it's not fun, if it's not paid.
Yeah, nobody wants pizza. Can we stop with that?
Yeah. I do my best.
I'm only kidding.
Oh, no, I'm kidding. I will say 11-day shoot pizza only on third meal and only twice. So in Reading, Pennsylvania. So let's just
mine is come already fed.
Yeah, I learned about that. Why didn't that exist like 10 years ago? This whole magical come already fed thing.
No, he brought candy on set the other day. He handed out one candy to each one.
I had 3 left at home and I gave them away instead of having one. No, it's just the way, I just want people to have a good time. I don't know. It's like, even if it's, we have a lot of, I will tell you, non-filmmaking related in advertising, we have a lot of really hard days. If you guys want to just talk about that, but we have a lot of fun also. And I think we just had a really great couple of days on set, and it was, our small crew, and we had a good time, but it can also be difficult. So when it's difficult, make everything else fun. If people want like a special lunch or a special drink, or you realize they didn't get a brownie one day or something, buy them a brownie the next day. I'm being serious. Like, do those little things. People will appreciate that forever. Lend people equipment, give them advice that they asked for, not that they didn't.
Yep. Karma exists.
Yeah.
Let's see, we have 3 official minutes left. I know we can go a little longer, but anyone on the panel, is there anything that I haven't asked or that you feel is important to get out there?
Do we get any questions from the chat?
We have not gotten questions from the chat, to which I said, well, I'm sure that we have our own questions. So do you want to start, Sam? Is there anything you want to chime in with that hasn't been addressed?
No, George was raising his hand. We could pass it on.
12-second one is just the phrase that resonates with me to describe what Nick is saying is having a servant's heart. On set, everybody and the director kind of at the top of the totem pole is being served by everyone. Everyone, if they're doing their job, is trying to help you achieve your vision. And so you have to be the greatest servant, right? Like serving others. But it goes back to assembling the crew. Like you said, Karlina, there are certain people that I know will collaborate well with me and won't talk over me. And if there's somebody that I've worked with that has talked over me, and produce, I don't want to spend time yoiling that person, but I want my producer to be able to like yoink that person and be like, okay, don't do that, right? But everyone needs to know we're all in service of each other, because we're all in service of the vision of the film.
You're muted.
All right, I'm almost mastering the mute thing. Is there anything else anyone wants to chime in with? Any things I haven't asked, or important points? Lessons
It'll cost you
learned?
twice as much as you think.
Yes.
Twice as many people as you think.
You need twice as many PAs. Everyone
You're
always
better off. Hold on.
on the keys. Get that support staff. They are critical.
And I will say you're better off when you're talking about key positions. Experience is everything. Experience, sound, experience, focus pullers. Technicians and craftspeople are craftspeople for a reason,
Absolutely. And I think we that's why when you assemble a team, we don't look at resumes. We say, who did you work with last that was great, not who looks great on this sheet of paper. And I've often joked that I don't like new people, and that's not entirely true, but I certainly do love a reliable team where I know their dynamics and their idiosyncrasies, and I can match, this person is a little more vocal, this person is not. Let's put them together and they will each support each other. You were gonna say, George?
I was actually just gonna contradict Nick, but not really, right? So like having people who can do the job is so important, but also as a first-time filmmaker, it's like, I think that it can sometimes be, you can fall into the trap of like, it's not a real movie if I don't have a camera operator, a first assistant camera operator, a second assistant camera operator, and a camera PA, and then a gaffer, a key grip, and all these things. It's like, your movie, like all that matters is that you treat people well. It's, at the end of the day, you have the clips that you have to assemble your movie. And so, especially if you're making a first film, and Sam could speak better to this, but like, I don't know what your experience was using union staff, Sam, but it's like, it's really expensive. So if I could get Nick to DP my movie and be like, hey, Nick, like, can you pull your own focus? I know it's not ideal, but we just have no money, but like, can you do it? Is it going to be ideal? No, but for my first film where I have a very small budget, I think that's better than paying $600 a day for an experienced AC who like is not going to have that huge of an impact on the film. Obviously, it needs to be in focus. That's huge. But so
Nick will disagree with that right away.
But I think the contradiction lends itself to the fact that filmmaking is not like panels like this are ultimately they're ultimately they're only as helpful as showing every story that is there. It's so different for everyone. And that's what's exciting about filmmaking. Look into the tradition of filmmaking, look at the Ed Woods and the Alfred Hitchcocks, and like you can see the gamut of what filmmaking is, and it doesn't fit one thing. So all these rules, I mean, they say there's the only rules, just do it. I think, and as the title of this talk, I think just do it and be confident. There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. This is great. I like that as an ending note. What do you, unless anyone else wants to start a fight?
I want Nick to come back and cream me. So
No, I'm just gonna say, as a camera operator, I pull my own focus. I've done it a long time, but it's really nice to be able to focus on my frame. And,
Sure.
you know, if you want, that's all I'll say. It's really nice to focus on the frame that you want, and I don't have to worry about. All I have to say is pull from here to there, go here when this happens, and that's
And I
something
think
the director's saying that, but that's it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And I think that this is a great example of pre-production and the conversations that need to start before you're on set. And I've always said, crew can handle almost anything if they have been told, if they've been given the respect to know what they're getting into. So I think this is a great example of a conversation that George would have with Nick. They would work it out so then it's not a surprise when Nick arrives on set and everyone feels good about stuff. You know, be honest with your team and they will support you. Anytime you try to finagle, you're gonna get caught.
And just adding to that, Karlina, like if Nick agrees to that, and then I say, okay, so this shot, we're tracking down 4 city blocks and you're handing off between all these different characters. Nick
can say,
no. We're on sticks, right?
Yeah,
or you know, like whatever. So and you have to work within those limitations. I think that's my big point.
Said this is the limit on your resource, so you have to respect that you set that limit. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's see, is there anything else, or should we? I can have the live feed stopped, and then the 6 of us can say a little goodbye. Does that sound okay with everyone?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone who came and was on the panel. Amazing. Anna, Nick, Dennis, Sam, George, you guys were great. And thank you for anyone who viewed in, and we will stop the live stream and then we will have a giggle before we depart our Zoom. So thank you. I will have.
Thanks, everyone.
Great. Thanks you all. Thanks. Thanks, Indeed.